Elliott Serrano and Jose Melendez coming to you from Dreamland Comics in Schaumburg, Illinois. Thank you once again for joining us here on the Comic Culture Warrior YouTube channel. Today we have a couple issues, a couple new books that we want to look at and revisit a couple older topics. And actually this is a topic that has been boiling, simmering, and now coming to a full boil. Amazing Spider-Man. We talked about this in the last series of segments. It was the unmasking of Spider-Man to the Fantastic Four. And a lot of debate was going on as to how this actual unmasking took place in relation to Spider-Man unmasking in the Avengers. And since we posted those videos, a couple things have come to light. The first thing being that Bendis really wanted Spider-Man, Peter Parker, to unmask to the Avengers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was in an interview with Dan Slott. Dan Slott actually said that Bendis wanted to do that in his books. Because the question was, why is it happening in New Avengers before you even get to an Amazing Spider-Man? And he's like, well, I had the story laid out, blah, blah, blah. Bendis wanted to really tell his story first, and they didn't. I think it was something where editorial obviously editorial doesn't talk to each other at all at Marvel. Right. So Bendis just came out first, which totally contradicts everything that is happening in this issue. So, yet again, like, Bendis had to be out first, and he's fucking everything over because... so we'll get into why everything's... what happened in New Avengers number 51 is now contradictory to what happened in
Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Well, let's... for those who might have missed it last time, in issue number 590, they were teasing that Spider-Man was teaming with the Fantastic Four, and everyone on the Fantastic Four clearly remembered that they knew who Spider-Man was at some point, but that for some reason had forgotten. So the Mephisto spell has that hole in it, in that people may have forgotten who Spider-Man was, but they did not forget that the people who had previous knowledge of Peter Parker as his secret identity, they didn't forget that they once had that bit of knowledge, if that makes sense. No. Well, anyway. Long story short.
And Peter Parker knows that everyone who once knew his secret identity now no longer doesn't.
Well, in Avengers, it seems like he was ignorant of that. In Amazing Spider-Man, it's like,
ignorant writer writing.
Well, yeah, I know. But it seems like, and that's the thing. With Spider-Man, you were never really clear on that after the whole Brand New Day thing. Does Spider-Man really know that he has unmasked in the past? Or does Peter Parker remember that?
Yes.
Or does he have some, and to me it was never that clear.
Right, well, Dan Slott finally got to that part in the story, and that should be his story to tell because this is the Amazing Spider-Man.
Amazing Spider-Man.
So that story should have waited to come out in here because he does deal with all that now.
Right. And yet it happens pretty suddenly in New Avengers, which is not a Spider-Man book, where Spider-Man isn't even the main character in that book. I mean, it's friggin' Luke Cage. I mean, we all know that. And he
contemplates the whole unmasking thing for like 3 pages in there, where he actually contemplates two entire issues
in Amazing Spider-Man. So what happens at the end of 690, Johnny Storm set Peter Parker's mask on fire so that he would have to pull it off. And we were like, oh my god, did he see it?
But then they didn't show his face, so we were kind of like, well, they're probably going to do something where you start out the book and it's going to be something else.
And that's exactly what they did. Basically, Sue Storm uses her powers to make Peter Parker's head invisible. Mm-hmm. So you can't see him.
Right.
So it's basically, it's her at least respecting Peter Parker's right to privacy. And so it's not unmasked right off the bat. So instead of taking that kind of an arbitrary, I guess that's kind of cliched, whatever you want to call it. Spider-Man, Dan Slott has Peter Parker, a.k.a. Spider-Man, a.k.a. blah, blah, have this long discussion throughout the book, basically considering should he unmask or not.
Right.
And he's really struggling with it. And he's going back and forth, until finally they get to the part where Reed Richards comes up with a solution.
Yes. But before that, so there's a page in here where their adventure is done and they save the day and all this stuff, and then Reed Richards and Peter Parker, well, Spider-Man, are having a conversation now about how is this possible, how do you not remember, and he's explained to Reed Richards why he can't tell them, because he goes into it, I was like, well, what if the Puppet Master takes you guys over again, and somehow my secret identity comes out.
Right.
And then he goes on in this page individually about the New Avengers. This is why I cannot tell the New Avengers. This is why I cannot tell Luke Cage. This is why I cannot tell Ms. Marvel. This is why I cannot tell the New Avengers. He tells you that this is why he's not doing it to New Avengers. And then Reed Richards comes up, well, I have an idea, whereas if you tell us, the Fantastic Four, he's come up with a scientific way where they will be able to keep their Peter Parker secret within the Fantastic Four.
Right.
Within the Fantastic Four. Not everybody.
Right.
Okay, so
Reed Richards sets up some mental blocks.
Yeah, because there is mental blocks, and they sort of explain that the people who knew who Peter Parker was, there's a mental block. So when they try to think about it, the mental block actually causes them to go around in circles,
right,
where it doesn't really make any sense,
right,
in their minds. So Reed Richards is like, well, we can simulate that mental block. So if someone ever takes control of us or something like that, that they won't be able to take it out of our minds.
Right.
And then Peter Parker goes on to explain, okay, well, this is how it works. Once I take off my mask, everybody who knew who I was, who sees me without my mask, that mental block will come unblocked, and all the memories that you once had of knowing who I was will all come back to you.
Right.
Okay? So, in
this book right here, on its own, this is a great moment.
Yeah,
this
really
is a really well-written, great moment. I really liked it.
And so he unmasks himself right here, and then there's a panel where they're all just looking at him, and there's no word balloons.
Right.
And then the second panel down, Johnny Storm's like, "Hey Pete, long time no see."
Long
which
time
is
no
just really
see.
handled really, really well.
Really well. I really liked that. When I read that, I was like, wow. Now this was that emotional impact that we were looking for in this kind of a revelation that was really lacking in New Avengers. Okay.